I think doing a PhD in IDD is a very distinctive experience for a number of different reasons. I think the first one is it's an excellent academic instruction. We all have very well qualified staff. We have a lot of resources we're able to support PhD students with. But I think the one thing that probably makes it more distinctive than a lot of other places is that we are more than an academic department, that most of us within the department have a lot to do with the policy world. So we work with people at local level, at national level, so British government organisations, but also other aid providers across the world. We also then work with multilateral institutions like the United Nations and the World Bank. So the application process itself is relatively straightforward and is detailed online. I think there are a couple of things that you probably need to think about before applying. The first one is the most critical relationship you have whilst doing a PhD is with your supervisor. So we operate a system of co-supervisors within IDD. So you don't just get one, you get two of us, but you have a primary supervisor, and that really is a critical relationship. So my advice is to seek out someone who is interested in the subject, seek out somebody who has had PhD students before, talk to their PhD students. So anyone who comes to me who is interested in doing a PhD with me, I ask them always to go and talk to previous PhD students that I supervise, so they get an idea of what it's like, what I'm like, whether it's any good or not, all of those things. I think the other aspect that people need to be aware of is the most difficult element of starting a PhD is the funding. And having a look at where funding can come from is a really critical activity before you really get into deciding whether to do a PhD or not. So our PhD students are funded from a variety of sources. On the University of Birmingham website, there is a directory of different funders. Within IDD itself, we have a number of people who are self-funded. We have people who are funded by governments and other multilateral organisations like the UN. We also have quite a number of students who are funded through national and quite prestigious schemes, in particular the Economic and Social Research Council, but also the Commonwealth Scholarships Commission of the United Kingdom. And in fact, one of my other roles is to be a commissioner to the Commonwealth Scholarships Commission. So we have a few students who come through that route. It's always worth looking at your own governments. It's always worth looking at funding opportunities from the countries you come from to get a chance at funding to come here to study at the UK. The application process itself doesn't take particularly long. However, part of the application process involves developing a detailed academic proposal that shows us that you have an idea of what you're doing. There are guidelines on the website around what that should look like, but fundamentally it's around what is your research question? Do you understand some of the literature around it? Have you discussed this with a potential supervisor? I think for some of the funders I mentioned, like the ESRC, it can be a much longer timeline to get into applying for funding, maybe up to around 6 months. And they have different deadlines throughout the year. So it's always worth checking out when the deadlines are and starting early.